The rain tapped softly against the kitchen glass, and the smell of fresh coffee filled the air. An ordinary morning, at least on the surface. But something in the space between us had changed. I used to believe I knew my wife completely. Sophia was sharp, visionary, always 3 moves ahead. She built her design studio from nothing. I built my world from numbers and forecast. Logic and creativity, that was our balance. Lately, though, the way she looked at me was different. Less affectionate, more analytical, like she was studying a possibility instead of a partner. Her comments had shifted too. Not about my work, but about my potential. "You live behind structure," she told me one evening. "What if you stopped managing every detail and just transformed?" I brushed it off as one of her philosophical moods, but the thought stayed with me longer than I expected. Our home had slowly become an extension of her aesthetic. Soft palettes, curated textures, a signature fragrance lingering in every room. I told myself it was collaboration. Still, it sometimes felt like I was stepping onto a set she had designed. Then she proposed what she called a reset week. "No debates. No second-guessing," she said with a playful smile. "You follow my lead completely. Total trust." Sounded harmless, even exciting. A relationship exercise. I agreed before I fully examined the implications. The next morning she was already prepared. A polished box waited on the table like a wrapped secret. Inside were grooming products, cosmetics, styling tools, items far outside my routine. Beneath them, folded neatly, was a pastel garment I didn't recognize at first glance. My confusion must have shown, because she stepped closer and spoke gently but with certainty. "This is about perspective," she said. "About stepping outside the identity you cling to." In the bathroom mirror she worked with steady hands, blending tones, shaping features, adjusting details with the focus of an artist refining a portrait. I joked at first, trying to keep the moment light, but her concentration never broke. When she positioned a styled wig and turned me toward the glass, my humor faded. The reflection looking back at me felt unfamiliar. Softer lines, brighter expression, a version of me stripped of my usual defenses. Not a joke. Not a costume. A statement. Behind me, Sophia watched with calm satisfaction, not mocking, not gloating, simply certain. "Meet the version of you that isn't hiding," she murmured. The day unfolded like a workshop in reinvention. Posture corrections, movement coaching, presentation tips. She approached it with clinical care, almost academic interest. She never raised her voice, never forced, but she directed everything. By nightfall, exhaustion and intrigue tangled together in my thoughts. When I caught my reflection again before sleep, the unease finally surfaced. This was supposed to be a game, yet it felt more like a doorway I hadn't realized I was walking through. And Sophia, standing quietly behind me, looked like someone who had known that all along. Sunlight slipped through the curtains in thin, pale bands, drawing lines across the sheets. Sophia was already awake, perched at the edge of the bed with a notebook open, pen moving with quiet purpose. The air carried her familiar perfume. For a moment, I hoped the previous day had been nothing more than an overactive dream. "Morning," she said evenly. Then with a small smile, "Or maybe not, Ethan, at least not this week." I groaned and rubbed my eyes. "You're still doing this?" "You agreed to 7 days," she replied, lifting the notebook. "And I take agreements seriously." Inside were rules written in careful script. Follow instructions precisely, stay in character, keep an open mind, record every feeling, don't argue the process, trust the guide. The last line was underlined twice. Before I could protest further, she ushered me to the bathroom. Another kit waited, more elaborate than before. Brushes, palettes, styling tools arranged like surgical instruments. Steam clouded the mirror as she worked with practiced focus, treating my face like a canvas and the moment like research. "Think of it as field work," she said. "You study patterns. Today the pattern is you." Nervous humor died on my tongue. She wasn't joking, she was documenting. When she finished, she presented clothes chosen with designer precision. Soft fabrics, tailored shapes, nothing like my usual wardrobe. I resisted out of reflex, but her calm certainty wore down my objections. By midday I barely recognized the person standing in the living room. She evaluated the result the way a sculptor studies marble, circling, adjusting, refining. "Next phase," she said lightly. "We take a drive." My pulse jumped. She assured me it would be contained, No crowds, no exposure, just perspective outside the apartment walls. Every traffic light felt like a spotlight. Every passing car tightened the knot in my chest. Yet under the anxiety was a strange spark of energy I couldn't deny. She parked near a quiet cafe and told me to look, not at people but at the reflection in the glass. For a brief second I didn't see a disguise. I saw an option. Back home she toasted to honesty and dismantling old armor. Her words unsettled me because they landed too close to truths I avoided. When she stepped away for a call, I found myself drawn to the mirror again, studying the unfamiliar ease in my posture. "Careful," she said softly behind me. "Reflections don't just show, they suggest." The following morning my usual clothes were gone. In their place, a coordinated set she'd chosen. She called it consistency training. No switching back and forth, no breaking the role. I dressed slowly, feeling exposed in ways I couldn't fully explain. She wrote observations as I moved. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Unprotected," I admitted. "Good," she said. "That means we're past the surface." Then she handed me a card with a new name written in flowing cursive. She wanted me to use it for the day, to test how identity responds to repetition. Saying it aloud felt strange but not impossible. Each time it was spoken, something inside me shifted a fraction. Days developed their own rhythm. Exercises in posture and voice, journaling prompts beginning with the same phrase, self-observation instead of self-defense. My entries changed tone without me noticing at first. From resistance to curiosity to moments of unexpected confidence. She showed me the pattern forming across the pages and raised an eyebrow. "Habit," she asked softly, "or truth?" Training intensified, not about appearance she insisted but presence. Control of how one is perceived. The theory made sense. The experience blurred boundaries. One afternoon I caught myself moving through the routine without prompting, humming absent-mindedly. She watched from the doorway, surprised but not shocked, as if this outcome had always been on her chart. "You're integrating faster than predicted," she said. I started to deny it and stopped. The denial no longer fit cleanly. By the fifth morning the experiment no longer felt like an experiment. The voice that woke me was hers, steady, assured, expectant. "Good morning," she said gently, using the new name without hesitation, as if it had always been mine. The observation session began before I was fully awake. She said my new name with such ease that hearing Ethan now sounded distant, like a label from an old file. When I sat up, something felt off. In the vanity mirror I wasn't seeing a costume anymore. My hair had been shaped into soft curls overnight, carrying a light jasmine scent. I turned. "You did this." Sophia didn't look guilty, just calm, pouring tea. "Sensory anchoring," she said. "Part of the conditioning." "Conditioning?" My voice sharpened. "You asked me to guide you. Trust requires consistency." She glanced at me. "And it suits you." I tried not to agree, but the mirror made it difficult. That morning's exercise changed. No posture work, no cosmetics. Just a notebook placed in front of me. "Write a complete day as Elena," she said. "From waking to sleep. Thoughts included." "This is too much," I protested. "You're asking me to become someone else. Are you certain she isn't already you?" Sophia leaned closer, voice low and steady. Every protest sounds less like defense and more like fear of being replaced. The words unsettled me, but I wrote. Page after page. And when I finished, it read less like invention and more like confession. That evening she presented a gift box wrapped in satin. Inside lay a sleek red dress, elegant, unapologetic. "I can't wear that." "You can." "Tonight proves it. A public dinner. A small step." "I'm not ready." "You're prepared enough." Minutes later the mirror showed me wrapped in red, shaped by fabric and doubt. At the restaurant my nerves roared in my ears. Each footstep felt loud. Each glance felt dangerous. But none came. No double takes. No suspicion. Just a polite smile from the waiter. "Good evening, ladies." Something shifted inside me then. Not performance but presence. During dinner Sophia watched closely. "What do you feel?" I hesitated. "Free," I admitted. She smiled, but there was a hard edge behind it. That's why reversal becomes painful. Once comfort bonds to identity, separation feels like damage. "You talk like there's no going back." The mind rewires quickly, she said. You're proof. That night I challenged her. Told her she'd crossed from researcher to manipulator. I opened a door, she replied coolly. You walked through. You took control. I gave you aliveness. When did you last feel it before this? I had no answer. Later, alone with the mirror, stripped of styling and performance, I searched for certainty in my reflection. Instead I found familiarity where strangeness used to live. The next morning soft music played, hers not mine. My old clothes were gone. The wardrobe held only Elena's world now. Dresses, heels, silk and color where neutrals once ruled. Sophia greeted me with coffee. Good morning, Elena. Stop. No one else uses the old name anymore, she said lightly. All project records reflect the updated identity. My pulse spiked. You changed the files? Documentation shapes perception, she replied. Perception shapes reality. Training grew stricter after that. She refined my movements, corrected my posture, tuned my voice. Each adjustment framed as discovery, not obedience. Don't shrink, she'd say, straightening my shoulders. Meet your reflection, lifting my chin. Your body tells the truth before your mouth does. Resistance felt thinner each day. In front of the tall mirror she gave one final exercise. Eyes closed. Describe yourself. Ethan Brooks, analyst, 29. Incorrect. I swallowed. Elena Brooks. Confident. Inquisitive. Better. She fastened a fine gold chain around my neck, a tiny key resting against my skin. A marker of progress, she whispered. It looked delicate. It felt heavy. Time lost its edges after that. The days didn't end, they repeated. Sophia photographed everything. Every pose, every outfit, every expression. She called it research, but the prints multiplied until the walls themselves felt like witnesses. In every frame Elena grew sharper. Ethan grew faint. Sometimes I caught him, a flicker while rinsing my mouth, a shadow in dark glass. The reflection stood straighter than I did. It smiled when my face stayed still. Fighting it felt useless, like arguing with gravity. Sophia watched the shift with quiet approval. One evening she brushed a curl away from my cheek and said softly, "Real change happens in the mind first. The body just follows the decision." "So you rewired me," I murmured. "I uncovered you," she replied. "You were hiding in plain sight." That night, doubt turned into urgency. While she showered I searched drawers, folders, drives. I needed proof this was still science and not control. I found her logs. Phase charts, behavior maps, vocal metrics, compliance curves. The last entry froze me. Identity merged near completion. Final stage. Reinforcement through reliance. Reliance. "You weren't meant to read ahead," Sophia said from the doorway. I spun around. "You're engineering my dependency." She shook her head with sad patience. "I'm removing your costume. You wore it so long you forgot it wasn't skin. I'm not your design. Aren't you?" Her voice stayed gentle. "Your habits, your tone, your confidence, all awakened through guidance." I couldn't answer, and that terrified me more than her certainty. Sleep abandoned me. The room amplified every tiny sound. Across from the bed, the mirror held a composed stranger wearing my face. I gripped the small key pendant at my throat as if it might open an exit. Under the dim light, truth settled in. It wasn't a key to escape. It was a reminder of who controlled the door. Rain hammered the windows the night I finally confronted her. She sat composed on the sofa while I stood rigid near the glass. "How long have you been steering this?" I asked. "Since you started hiding from yourself," she said calmly. "Since I trusted you," I snapped. "Since you performed a version of masculinity that exhausted you," she corrected. "You wanted permission to stop. You erased my life. I replaced your mask. Freedom doesn't come with surveillance." For the first time her composure cracked. "Do you think this was easy to watch? Your fear, your resistance? Growth rarely feels kind." She led me to the mirror. We stood side by side, her certain, me divided. "What do you see?" "Someone you constructed," I said. "Someone you allowed," she answered. "I never asked for this. You needed it anyway." Something hardened inside me. "You don't define me." "Then choose," she said quietly. From a drawer she removed a small box. Inside lay the same key pendant, but now mounted on a tag engraved with one word. Final. Walk out and reclaim Ethan, she said. No training. No Elena. No return. Her voice softened. Stay, and stop pretending forever. The storm outside roared like static in my skull. If I leave, it all resets? Yes. And if I stay? You live honestly. Leaving should have felt like rescue. Instead it felt like erasing something that had learned how to breathe. The mirror showed two selves. One braced in fear, one steady in acceptance, both undeniably mine. Sophia's voice trembled for the first time. I didn't want to break you. I wanted you to see you were never broken. The lights snapped off with a thunderclap. Darkness swallowed the room. When power returned, she was gone. Only the key remained on the vanity, catching the light, and in the mirror my reflection met my gaze without flinching. The moment felt staged, almost ceremonial. My fingers closed around the pendant and her voice drifted through the room, faint, disembodied, impossible to place. The last change is never imposed. It's accepted. Memory, or playback. I couldn't tell. Before I could decide, 3 soft knocks landed on the door. Measured. Familiar. My breath locked in my chest. Ethan. Sophia's voice, but from the hallway. The sound came again, firmer, echoing through the walls like a dare. The pendant on the vanity caught the light, daring me to move first. I opened the door slowly. She stood there soaked from rain, hair darkened, composure stripped down to something sharper. Not the clinical guide, something more dangerous, more human. Why are you back? I asked. To finish honesty, she said, stepping inside without waiting. Her gaze scanned me, precise and cutting. Look at you. You're already living the answer you're trying to deny. You dismantled my life, I said. My name. My control. I removed your hiding places, she replied quietly. There's a difference. I feel trapped. You feel exposed. The distinction stung because it wasn't entirely wrong. My anger surged, then collapsed under its own weight. I dropped to my knees, words breaking apart. I don't know who I am anymore. She knelt beside me, voice gentler. You're not split. You're expanded. That doesn't feel like freedom. Growth rarely does. The room held only rain and breathing and the small glint of the key charm across the room. I realized the terror and the relief were braided together so tightly they were indistinguishable. You pushed me to the edge, I said. Now I choose what happens next. Lightning flashed. Shadows jumped. A new knock exploded against the door. Urgent, unfamiliar. Ethan? Elena? You okay in there? Not Sophia. Someone else. The outside world calling roll. My pulse sprinted. Sophia didn't interfere. She only watched. Answer it, she said softly. But answer truthfully, at least to yourself. I turned to the mirror. The face looking back wasn't a stranger anymore, but it wasn't the old certainty either. It was a composite. A negotiation made visible. I can't go back to pretending, I whispered. Then don't, she said. The pendant felt warm when I lifted it. Not like control, not like surrender, like authorship. I fastened it around my neck. I choose all of me, I said. For once her smile held no strategy. Only relief. The knocking stopped. Silence poured into the space it left behind. When I looked again, Sophia had stepped away, giving distance like a final gift. My reflection held steady, not divided, not finished, but owned. You see, her voice murmured from somewhere behind memory. The choice was always yours. The storm faded to a drizzle. Streetlights fractured across wet pavement below. Thought it was over. Then the door eased open by itself with a faint wooden sigh. The hallway was empty, except for an envelope placed exactly in the center of the threshold. My name written twice across the front, both identities in the same elegant script. I opened it. This isn't the end. It's activation. Cold spread through my arms. I turned. The room was empty. No Sophia. No sound. Only the mirror and the pendant and the new steadiness in my own eyes. A whisper brushed the air. Maybe imagination, maybe warning. The next phase is yours to design. Outside, the city moved on without caring who I was becoming. Inside, I understood something final and frightening. Some doors don't close behind you, they disappear.